Welcome back to another episode of the Lawyers in the Making podcast. I'm your host, as always, Nate Crespo, and today we have another amazing guest. He's a graduate of Mercer University, Walter F. George School of Law, and currently works as a personal injury and wrongful death attorney at the Champion Law Firm. He's held past positions as an attorney at Brogdon Champion and as an attorney at Warshauer Law Group. That's a tough one.
Warshauer.
Warshauer.
Yeah.
There we go. See, I try every episode.
It's a hard name to pronounce.
I
Darl is easier to pronounce than that.
Darl is easier, as I learned before. Excited to have him on the podcast today, Mr. Darl Champion. Welcome to the podcast. How are we doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity. Always interested to, tell my story about how I ended up in law school and my experience in it and how I got to where I'm at. And I think, this podcast idea you have is wonderful.
Well, I appreciate that, and I am very happy to have you here as well. Now, Darl, before we get started, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I live in the Atlanta area. I'm originally from North Carolina. My dad was in the military and got out before I was born, but stayed in the town. And so I grew up in a military town. It's called Fayetteville, North Carolina, right next to what used to be called Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty, one of the largest military bases in the world. My mom worked on the Army base for her entire career from the time she was 18 until the time she retired. Went to public schools, graduated from high school in 2000. My dad taught at the local college. It was called Methodist College at the time. It's now Methodist University, and it's a small liberal arts school, about 2,000, 2,200 students. So didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, and decided, well, I know should be going to college. So let me go to the college my dad teaches at because I didn't have to pay tuition. And I thought, I'll just go there and figure things out and, then decide what I want to do. Ended up staying there all 4 years, graduated in 2004, then went to law school at Mercer, which I know we'll talk a lot about today and kind of that journey. I have my own plaintiff's firm in the Atlanta area. Started it 10 years ago. So this year is our 10-year anniversary. And before that, had a couple good experiences. One clerking for a federal judge after law school. Spent 2 years doing that. Then spent a few years at a plaintiff's firm before starting my own firm.
Well, let's go back to the beautiful year of 2004. I was 1 year old.
You're making me feel old, Nate.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Listen,
No, it's okay.
Sometimes I feel old. I'm 20 years old now. I've been at Mercer for 2 decades. It's pretty insane, honestly.
Yeah.
It shocks me every day of my life. I'm
Just
like,
wait till you're 40.
then it would be
Double the years.
Oh my goodness. I'm not scared, but I can't wait I guess I can't wait to be 40. I guess that would be nice. But going back all the way to the year 2004 at Methodist University. Also, congratulations on 10 years of the Champion Law Firm. That's a big achievement.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. 10 years of having your own firm. I hope to do that one day. Maybe not a law firm. Maybe it is a law firm, but have my own little thing going on. Why not? So Methodist University, you graduated in 2004. What were sort of the factors that went into deciding I'm going to go to Mercer University, I'm going to go to law school? Why'd you do it?
Yeah, so it's a great question. How did I end up in law school? I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think that's common among people that are, in college. There's so many different things you can study. And I liked a variety of different topics. I ended up being a political science major. I almost minored in Spanish, but I took a lot of Spanish classes. So I liked learning the Spanish language. Don't ask me if I'm fluent because I'm not. Took a lot of history classes. I liked learning about government and that kind of thing. And, I was thinking, well, I definitely don't want to do anything on the science or math side. I really wasn't interested in going to work at a business for somebody else. So the options were really law school or graduate school. And, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I really didn't know what it involved. And I think that's true of a lot of people. I think even the people that think they know what it involves, unless they've worked in a law firm or been exposed to it or have a family member in it, they really don't know. So um, it wasn't necessarily process of elimination that led me to go. I was interested in it. I mean, starting, I think my sophomore year, I started really looking at law schools and figuring out, okay, where do I want to go? I looked at schools in North Carolina, the Southeast, some in the Midwest. But I had a teacher, a professor at Methodist College who went to Mercer. So she was the head of the legal studies department and taught one of the legal studies classes I took. So she went to Mercer. I was familiar with it from that. But I mean, I didn't know much about Macon, Georgia, which is where the law school is. I got one of the fancy brochures, which every law school has a fancy brochure that makes it look great. It's a nice, shiny booklet and makes it look like it's awesome. But applied there, applied to several other schools, got into several, I looked at Florida State. I thought I wanted to go there because I thought, hey, it'd be great to live in Florida. But the out-of-state tuition was really high. At Mercer, they offered me a very generous scholarship. It was not full tuition, but it was pretty close to it. I mean, it was like 75% or more of the tuition. I think it was about 80%. And so like I can't turn that down. I mean, I'm going to be paying, I think at the time it was $25,000 a year tuition. When you started, you were locked in for all 3 years. They gave me like a $19,000 to $20,000 a year scholarship. So I'm like, it's kind of a no-brainer. Go to Mercer. So that's how I ended up at Mercer.
Well, it sounds like in the words of Don Corleone, you give them an offer that they simply can't refuse,
Right.
they did that for you, and that's definitely been a theme throughout this whole podcast is that money is a very important factor. It always should be,
Right.
because at the end of the day, it doesn't grow in trees, as my mother tells me.
Yes,
So.
correct.
So it should always be one of the very main factors in choosing a law school. Now let's go to that first year. People always talk about it's the most intense or traumatic or, whatever it may, you could put any word on it, but how was it for you?
Um, when I started, and I guess let me kind of put this in context a little bit. I think, as with anything, it's what you make out of it. And I did not go into law school with any preconceived ideas about where I was going to rank or, I I tried hard. I got really great grades in college. But I never viewed myself as like, I want to be at the top of my class. It was just, I just want to do my best. I just want to try my best. I did not have any intentions of, going to work at a big law firm, for example, which if that's your goal, being in the top of your class is very important, particularly at Mercer. I mean, if you're at Harvard or one of the top tier law schools, the big firms hire a little bit deeper into the class. At Mercer, though, and if you go to a school that's kind of in that same category, there is kind of a lot of pressure to rank high if that's what you want to do. But I didn't want to do that. I thought I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney, and or personal injury attorney. I thought I wanted to do both because where I grew up, like we didn't have big law firms. I grew up in a mid-sized city in Eastern North Carolina. I mean, that was, I mean, everybody that I knew that was a lawyer kind of did everything. They did there were some that did personal injury and criminal defense, but some of them did like divorces and wills and personal injury, criminal defense. They did kind of everything. So I didn't really know what I had an idea what I wanted to do. And so I really focused on just doing my best and just learning. And I think that helped a lot. First semester, I, worked my tail off, spent a lot of time in the library reading cases, got up early and would study, was just continuously reading cases and doing my best. And did great. I mean, I think at the end of the first semester, I was like in the top 10% of my class. And so second semester, I was like, wow, like maybe I really should continue putting forth this maximum effort and maybe even focus on, trying to really just hit it out of the park. And so um, second semester was kind of the same thing. I took the skills that I learned and kind of what I needed to do to be successful and to continue to grow, and did that. And then my grades the second semester were even better. And then that gets us to the summer after my first year, which I'll stop there. But that was kind of how my first year went. I mean, it's obviously it's a lot of stress. I think the biggest thing though is it's just drudgery. It's just reading cases consistently day after day. It's like Groundhog Day. You're like, I mean, I think my first semester I had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I had like the same four classes. And then Friday I had like one or two. But it's like every day, gotta go, gotta read. Get done with class, go read. Get done with class, go read. And it was just a lot of work.
So I have to ask from that, what were sort of some key things that you held with yourself, or the sort of mindset that you had to get through all that stress of the first year?
That's a great question. I mean, um, just putting my head down and doing the work. I mean, that was really a lot of it, was just kind of understanding that um, I just need to do the work and get through with it. I think a lot of people do get burnt out. I think that's common. I think there was definitely a time kind of halfway through the semester where, I was like, man, this is really just burning me out because I'm doing the same thing every day. So I think it's important to have a balance, exercise, take care of yourself, have interest and hobbies outside of school. Try and do things so you're not just always working, but it is a grind. It is an absolute grind if you're going to do what you need to do to be successful.
That's a great point. I love embracing the grind. You always have to embrace the difficult. As
Hmm.
I've seen before, I heard you say exercise. I love working out. It's one of my favorite things in the world. I always say the gym is my church. I go there, every single day. I go pray. But going forward in law school, how did you sort of figure out, you wanted to do personal injury? How did you sort of
Sure.
cement that path for yourself?
So, originally intending to do criminal defense, I only tried to get jobs after my first year for that summer that were criminal law related. So, DA's office, public defender, criminal defense firm. Got a job at the DA's office, interviewed with them, I want to say in the spring, and worked at the DA's office in Macon the summer after my first year through my entire second year. So was working part-time at the DA's office while having a regular course load my second year. It was eye-opening. First the pay sucked. I made like 5.25 an hour. I think the minimum wage then was like 5.15. Working 40 hours a week, getting like $190 a week take-home pay. But I think what I realized from that experience was I liked the academic side of criminal law. I liked issues of criminal procedure, constitutional law as it came up in that, and just kind of the substance of criminal law. But I didn't like the day-to-day practice of it. I didn't like it's just very messy. I mean, you're getting in there, you're dealing with, especially crimes involving children or, sexual assault or sexual abuse claims with minors or adults, and, violent crimes and drug crime. And it was just so messy. And just seeing that, I was like, you know what? I don't really think this is for me. Like, I want to look at something else. So, second year, as I'm doing the part-time gig at the DA's office, I'm thinking, what's out there? And I reached out to a couple people, ultimately got a summer clerkship at a really good plaintiff's firm in Macon, worked there summer after my second year, and then all through my third year. So that was like my part-time job through my third year, and really liked it. Like, I just really enjoyed it. I liked, working up cases. I liked research. I liked, working with people. And I knew at that point I was eventually going to be a plaintiff's lawyer.
I love to hear the work at the DA's office. I was fortunate enough to work at my DA's office this past summer, and just like yourself, it was truly was an eye-opening sort
Hmm.
of experience. I worked in asset forfeitures, and the sort of cases that the lawyers in my office. It was a small office, there were only three people. Bless them
Hmm.
all, though. They were amazing. They'd talk to me for hours because I have 6 million questions that they have to answer. And I sort of found out just like yourself that it's not something for me. It's constant motions. There's a lot of pro se cases.
Hmm.
We got people in jail basically coming after the department and them having to sort of deal with it. The people in jail aren't getting the deadlines in time, and now they're fighting this and they're doing motion after motion. And I was like, yeah, that's not, I don't think that would be for me. This doesn't seem enjoyable.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the experience. It was a very, very good time. And it was only me and another intern as well. So shout out Brendan, great guy. He's at NYU now, big guy. But it's definitely something to your point, is something I'd love to highlight on this podcast of sort of the negative experiences and the positive experience of the sort of work that you go and do. And clearly for yourself, it worked out in that same way that you don't really know if you like it or not until you actually try it. And I think
Yeah.
that's so, so important. So graduated law school in '07. You became a federal law clerk for the Honorable Hugh Lawson. Can you talk about that experience? How was that? Did you like it? Did you
Yeah.
love it?
So, again, I kind of fell into that clerkship. Clerkships are very coveted positions with federal judges, and a lot of people, want to do that. That wasn't really my goal. Again, either when I started law school or in law school. But, I'm graduating. I did well. I ended up graduating second in my class, was on law review and everything. And, that fall of my third year, kind of thinking about, okay, what do I want to do? Firms were interviewing. I don't want to do the criminal thing anymore. Should I go somewhere and maybe make some money first? Should I go work at a plaintiff's firm? Am I going to go back to North Carolina? Am I going to go to Atlanta? Am I going to stay in Macon like for a little while? What am I going to do? And so there was a federal judge in Macon that was hiring, applied to him, Judge Royal, excellent judge. Ended up not getting a clerkship with him, but he thought enough of me to give my information and share it with Judge Lawson and encouraged me to apply. Applied there, got the interview, got the clerkship. Great experience. It's one of those things that, although I didn't plan on that and didn't really like understand and comprehend that, like what that was and what it would entail, it's the best experience of my professional career by far. Got to spend 2 years kind of transitioning from law school to being a lawyer where all of a sudden you're dealing with real cases and you're working with a federal judge and you're getting to seek trials and criminal trials and civil trials and other things. And it also allowed me to continue to develop like my interest in what I was ultimately wanting to do. And it was just a nice 2 years. I think most people that probably all people that do a federal clerkship will say it's one of the best experiences of their professional career.
Would you say that sort of having that one-on-one experience with the federal judge really, really helped you in terms of, I guess, him presenting himself as a mentor to you, sort of teaching you the ropes? And I guess as another question, can you describe how important mentorship was to you throughout your career?
Sure. So, I worked with some excellent prosecutors at the DA's office when I was in law school. There's not a ton of mentorship when you're, the summer clerk. Um, but they would, tell me, hey, there's this hearing, there's this trial, this is interesting, and talk to me a little bit about it. There were a couple people in particular that like I was assigned to work for, and so I had more interaction with them. Definitely when I worked at the plaintiff's firm in Macon, got some really good mentorship from the people that worked there. And then certainly working for a federal judge. I mean, one of the things that he was big on was having lunch together with his law clerks every day, which, some judges don't do that. I mean, I've heard people that clerked for judges in the Northern District of Georgia and Atlanta, and it was like, you were just a worker bee, you just didn't have that. So being able to have that connection and just, it's really more just exposure. It's being a sponge. And I think that, whether you're uh, working somewhere your 1L year, 2L year, through it, whatever, being a sponge and just absorbing what's going on and taking it in and processing it is extremely helpful. And it will allow you to develop your interests, will allow you to develop, subject matter expertise, sometimes procedural expertise, and just kind of understanding how to practice law, how to carry yourself. And so I was very fortunate to have that 2 year clerkship experience.
Yeah, that's lovely that he had lunch with you every day. That's amazing,
Yeah.
honestly.
All the law, yeah, it was me, the other law clerk, the judge, his secretary, deputy clerk would sometimes join us. But it was a group of us. We go to lunch almost every single day.
that's lovely. Were you packing lunch? Were they buying it for you? I have to ask.
No, no, no. I had to pay for my own myself. Federal law clerks make okay money, especially being in Macon, where cost of living's affordable. It wasn't a big deal. And, it wasn't like we were going to super fancy places that were, $20 a meal or anything like that.
Absolutely. And I love the sort of saying that you just made there, sort of being a sponge. I find myself, I love being a sponge. I'm always listening, always learning. It's the most important thing to do. I'm a philosophy major, so I always have to get a
Okay.
little philosophical on the
You're
pod.
going to have to go to law school.
We'll see. I mean, that's the reason I made the podcast, to see if I should do it or
Yeah.
not. And
It's a great major for law school, by the way, is philosophy.
yeah, that's what I've been told many times, and even before I came to school, because originally I was a political science major, and
Hmm.
I started, taking the classes, and I was like, this, I don't want to say it sucked, but it sucked. And
Yeah.
I didn't love the readings, and it was just very dry, and I was like, ah. So, but in my free time, I read philosophy. So I was like, why don't I just be a philosophy major? And
Yeah.
ever since, the rest is history, as they say. It's been 3 years of being a philosophy major. I love it very much. I enjoy the classes. But one of my favorite philosophers, Aristotle, always talked about is very important. The gaining of knowledge. You always got to do it. You always
Mhm.
just got to keep learning and learning. You got to be a student for life. And that's
Yeah.
what I
Well,
strive to be.
I think the subject of majors is important, because you know, I didn't know what to major in. I got changed my major a bazillion times, but I liked psychology. I really like that. You know, I think a lot of people think they have to have a certain major to go to law school or to be successful in law school, and that's just not true. You can major in anything. You can major in business, marketing, history, social work, music, art, philosophy, whatever. I think the best thing is for people to do what interests them. Because if you're in a major that interests you and that you're passionate about, you're going to try your best. You're going to feel passionate about it. You're going to want to study, and that's going to get you the good grades, which will help you get into the law school. So, people shouldn't have a preconceived idea about what major they need to have to go to law school.
Yeah, that's a really important point and something I very much highlight. It's in the description of the podcast. There is no straight path, and you could take whatever route, but as long as you
Mhm.
feel passionate, you feel interested in going to law school, it doesn't matter what you're majoring. Even for myself, philosophy. But to your point, I'm very interested in philosophy. I get very good
Mhm.
grades in my philosophy class. I don't think I've ever not gotten an A in a philosophy class, but it's because I'm interested in it. I'm motivated.
Mhm.
They always give all the readings, which is very funny because we all know no one's actually doing the reading. But
Right.
I do a lot of the readings because it actually interests me. In one of my
Hmm.
classes, I know this past week we had to read about John Paul Sartre, and I knew about him. I knew who he was, but I wasn't really sure like what he was about. So I had to read it. I was like, this is very interesting. I don't agree with him that much, but it was just in that sense is that I'm interested in it. It gets me motivated to go to class, talk in
Hmm.
class, get good grades, become favorable with the professor per se. But
Yeah, no, I think doing what you're passionate about, that you want to learn, the subject that you're interested in is the most important thing. Because the other thing is, like, if you pick a major and you're thinking, hey, I want to go to law school, And then you kind of get to the end of college and you're like, man, I really don't want to go to law school. Well, then what? Are you going to have a degree where you studied something that you weren't even interested in, that you're not going to pursue a career in, or that's not going to be helpful to you? I mean, and again, whether it's law school, business, whatever it is, you can be successful in just about any field, even if you didn't study in it. I mean, I have my own law firm now for 10 years. I didn't know anything about business when I started, law school. When I got through law school, I didn't take a single business course in law school. I didn't take, or in undergrad. I didn't take a business class. I didn't take a marketing class. I didn't take an accounting class. I didn't know anything.
And to that point, I have to say that's why we have the wonderful internet. I'm a very big fan of the internet. It's how I started this podcast, actually. I went onto Google, I typed in how to start a podcast, and the rest is history from there. But I think there's so much information out there that you can really, sort of jump down the rabbit hole of
Hmm.
pretty much any subject nowadays and
Sure.
the best possible information that you can.
Hmm.
Go- Going back to your career, after you finished the federal law clerkship, you became an attorney for a year at Freeman, Mathis, and Gary, which
I
actually,
didn't I didn't even last a year there. It was
oh,
like 7 months.
7 months. But I,
They didn't fire me, by the way, just for the record. I quit. I went to go work at a plaintiff's firm. I could not stand working at a defense firm. It was just antithetical to every inch of my being. And I would have quit the first day if I could have.
so you went 7 months there, but then you became an attorney. All right, I'm gonna try it again. Wa
War shower.
Wash Warshower. Sorry,
War shower.
I got that Long Island accent. I
Yeah, that's good.
can't get it out. Warshower. There we go. Warshower Law Group for 4 years. How was that experience? Love it.
It was great. I worked with some excellent attorneys, developed great relationships, good friendships, that could continue to this day, even though I've been gone from there for 10 years. But it was a firm that really focused on catastrophic injury and wrongful death cases. So, their business model was to be selective on the cases they took. And so that was good in the sense that I got to work on some really high value cases and interesting cases, handled a ton of appeal brief writing when I worked there. Got to second chair some trials, got to what I would call third or fourth chair some trials where you're not actually the one sitting at counsel table, but you're helping with the trial prep. You're, you know, researching legal issues, maybe helping draft motions in limine, helping with jury instructions, and kind of getting to see that process from a case coming in through trial was really important. And, going back to the clerkship, that was another thing, just being a sponge. I watched a ton of trials when I was clerking. And so getting to see that, getting to, then see it in practice, and actually getting to work on the cases was invaluable and was just a phenomenal experience. But ultimately, I had that entrepreneurial bug, and I really wanted to start my own firm. And even though I didn't take a business class in college, I kind of always wanted to do my own thing. And some of that comes from I just don't work well for other people. I'm a little stubborn. I like to do things my way. Don't like being told what to do. And so, after 4 years, I really felt like I was at a good position to launch my own firm. And that's what I did. 2014, started the Champion firm, subleasing space from a family law attorney, rented one single office. I think she charged me like $900 a month. Didn't have any employees when I first started. I was the paralegal, legal assistant, whatever. And, my sole goal was to not starve to death. I mean, literally all I had was like 10 cases and a laptop and a printer and a desk and, all that stuff. But it's amazing to look back then, from now and to see everything that's changed and just my professional development and personal development and everything that kind of being a business owner and having my own firm has taught me.
So that's been of recently. I've had a ton of people on the podcast who
Mhm.
own their own firm and started it. Can you talk about starting your own firm, what sort of the stresses that went into that. I feel like every time I bring up this question, I sort of open up a Pandora's box of like the struggle.
Yeah, it's a lot of it. I mean, so I mean, again, kind of like with law school, like I didn't start law school with any goals to like, oh, I'm gonna get these grades, I'm just gonna get this. It was just I try my best. It's the same thing when I started my firm. Like I didn't have any revenue goals, financial goals, profit goals, or anything. My sole goal was to be able to support my family. I mean, we have two kids now, but I had just one child at the time, and it's like I just want to survive. Like I didn't have any grand ambitions to, reach some goal. And so, to some extent that helped a little bit because I set the bar pretty low for myself. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I've learned a lot about people. I've learned a lot about hiring, how to identify people that are a good fit for your firm, how to identify people that are a bad fit. I've learned a lot about managing people, about how to run and operate a law firm. I could tell you if I had started my firm 10 years ago with a plan to have it what it is now and tried to do that in a short period of time, I probably would have been way more stressed out because, most of the learning that I've gotten has just been from a slow burn over 10 years, just being exposed to it. Again, being a sponge, just learning things, picking up on things and learning from all the mistakes I've made. Um, but it was definitely the best decision that I ever made.
So in your 10 years of having the champion law firm, what's sort of the great lessons that you've taken away from it? I guess, the things that sort of stick out above.
Great question. Oh man, I'd have to go through this. I have my own podcast, Championing Justice, and on the very first episode, I went through like the mistakes that I've made. One of the mistakes is you get what you pay for. I've learned that with employees. The very first employee I hired was somebody I found off Craigslist to be a paralegal, like $10 to $12 an hour. Didn't last more than 3 weeks. That's certainly one. I think hiring for fit and personality and work ethic and character over resume is extremely important. Um, you know, I think that's overlooked a lot. I think a lot in sports analogies. And if you think of, your organization as a sports team and look at, whether it's, for example, a professional football team, are you a Jets fan or Giants?
Giants.
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, that's somewhat more success. But if you look at it and you say, hey, this person's extremely talented, they're just a great performer, but they're a cancer in the locker room, they're going to disrupt the team dynamic and the team isn't going to perform as well. And it's the same thing here. I mean, having a business and having a firm is a team sport. It's having people in different roles. It's having, as they say, the right people in the bus, but the people in the right seats as well. Um, I've learned get what you pay for doesn't just apply to employees, it applies to other things. I've learned the importance of having a long-term vision and being patient and viewing things as a long-term play. I think especially nowadays, and I grew up, I was born in 1982, so I'm kind of like that in between those generations. And I'm sure I would be classified in like one of four different generations or labels. But I didn't grow up with instant messenger or texting or cell phones. Like I had to borrow my dad's cell phone when I was in high school, like if I thought I might need it. And it was like a brick. I mean, it was huge. And you couldn't text on it, you couldn't do anything. So, you know, but I've developed and been able to use those technological tools certainly well as I have progressed. But I think that the current environment, I think everything with social media, the way that you can order things on Uber, Amazon, whatever, has led to this instant gratification and this idea of people wanting things now. They want success now. They start a job and they want to be making what the experienced 20-year person makes. They want to raise in 6 months, but they're not willing to put in the day-to-day work. And there's a great book that I read years ago, and it's called The Slight Edge. And it's just about how daily incremental improvements over a consistent long period of time can produce extreme results. And they do the curve where it kind of goes up like this, but at the same time, the negative results, it goes down like this. You like to work out. You could think of it as, somebody working out at the gym. If somebody doesn't eat well and doesn't exercise at first, they may still kind of be the same and not see those gains as the person who's going to the gym, but eventually those paths diverge. And I think having patience, not giving up when you can't see results, again, to use the gym analogy, like you're not going to be super buff 1 week going into the gym. But if you're constantly doing it every single day and have a long-term vision and are patient, that will get you there. And I think people that follow that approach, whether it's law school or, being a lawyer, can really have a lot of success. And it's sort of their edge, that I think they have over other people who give up sometimes when they don't see those results, or they want that instant gratification, and so they take shortcuts. Um, you know, you I can think of people that start their own law firm who might take shortcuts to trying to get cases. Maybe they do things that are questionable to try and get cases. And while that may produce some short-term success, it's not a good recipe for a long-term success. So I
Absolutely.
would say, embrace the long term and enjoy the process, right? And enjoy just the process of um, being a lawyer and working on stuff. And if you do that and work hard, everything will pay off in the end.
Yeah, those are all absolutely amazing and super duper important points, sort of, the compounding sort of exponential growth of things. And I
Hmm.
think just that sort of idea in itself it remains true in every single facet of life. I know you made the analogy to the gym. I remember when I used to look like a toothpick.
Yeah.
I haven't surpassed anything. I'm not large guy at all. But I definitely don't look like a toothpick anymore. And that was I've been working out for 4 years. It took a long time. I go to the gym every day. It's a daily grind, but it's just about showing up every day. If you show up every day, it's eventually, gonna work out. And a lot of it I found is sort of luck. Luck has a very big thing, a very big part of life, but if you could sort of push the balance or the balance and towards being a little more lucky. If you just show up every day, that's what I found.
You
That
create you create the opportunities for yourself is really what it is. I mean, I can think of cases that we've had that are big cases, and some people might look at them and say, "Well, you're lucky." Um, Maybe, I mean, yes, when you look at how did this person find me and how did they get to me, you're like, man, but at the same time, it comes back to I didn't just sit at home and do this. I wasn't just sitting back waiting for a case to fall in my lap. And I think that's a big mistake that a lot of younger lawyers make is they turn down opportunities to grow, to work with other people, to establish a name for themselves, to excel because they're wanting they want to be selective from the beginning. And you can get to the point that you can be selective, but you've got to put in the work on the front end. And it's not just being a plaintiff's attorney, but it's whatever you do. I mean, if you're going to work at a defense firm or a big firm or be a transactional lawyer, you've got to earn your stripes. And so you've got to put in the work and develop that expertise, develop that knowledge. You're not going to start right away with being given the big project or whatever. And again, I think if you went to law school, for example, because somebody has this idealized version or view of what it's like to be a lawyer because it's something they've seen on TV, and they want that instantly, they're going to be disappointed because being a lawyer is not like what it is on TV for a variety of reasons. And so I think that people really that are thinking about law school need to ask that question, why do they want to go to law school? Why do they want to be a lawyer?
that's really important. And before you talked about the book, The Slight Edge, that helped you. I have to ask, who authored that book? Do you know that?
I can Google it really quick. I think his name was Jeff Olson.
Okay.
Let me see. Yes, Jeff Olson, The Slight Edge. There's a bunch of books like that are kind of similar. There's a book called The Compound Effect by a guy named Darren Hardy. They're all kind of the similar, you know, genre, the similar kind of subject matter of this idea of doing the work on a daily basis and doing it consistently over a long period of time and the results that it can produce for you. It's like the old tortoise and the hare fable. You can sprint at the beginning and but if you're consistently just getting to your goal over a long period of time, you can beat somebody that starts out quicker, maybe that has an advantage at the beginning. Um, but again, I think whether it's law school, college, any kind of endeavor, people can really learn a lot just by being persistent and just showing up and doing the work.
It's a universal truth. I could not agree more. And since we're on the topic of books, are there any other books? Let's do the Darl Champion book recommendations, official on the Lawyers in
Mm.
the Making podcast. Some of your favorites that have helped you throughout your life. It doesn't have to be about law. It could be about pretty much anything. Just your favorite. Drop your recommendations.
That's a great question. I'd have to think about that. Because a lot of what I've read lately, I read a lot of trial lawyer books and trial guides and things like that. I really think The Slight Edge is a good is a really good book for people. Atomic Habits, which is somewhat of a similar kind of book, is kind of similar thing. I don't remember the titles, but I've read some books on Stoicism, which you'll appreciate as a philosophy major. I think any book that has to, I read one that it was like a daily meditation, 365 days, and each day you would read one. And then I read another one, I forget what it was. Um, I think people can benefit from um, Stoicism and the philosophy and reading it. I'm trying to think what else. I'm sure as soon as we get off the podcast, I'll be like, oh man, I've got this book on my shelf and it was like the greatest book ever. And I should have mentioned it.
Yeah, I can't believe you said Stoicism because I love it. I'm a very big fan of it, big proponent of it. But there's a book that I love. It's one of my favorite books, and I've never said it on the podcast before, and I was so disappointed. I was listening to a podcast beforehand, and they mentioned it, and I was like, "Damn,
Mhm.
I can't believe it's a Seneca, Letters to Lucius." Is
Okay.
one of probably one of the best books I've ever read. It is absolutely amazing. And I think this guy was around in like the year 300. So a very long
Okay.
time ago, but what he says is still extremely, extremely relevant. It was actually a podcast with Tim Ferriss. I don't know if you know who that is.
I know who he is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's a very big inspiration of mine.
I got a great book for you. Two good books. One is Grit.
Okay.
That's a great book. The other one is Mindset by Carol Dweck, Dweck. And the whole idea behind, and I would say Mindset may actually be the most important book I've read. Um, because it changes kind of the way you view just about everything. Um, the idea is that there's two types of mindsets. One is a growth mindset, one is a fixed mindset. The fixed mindset views people's skills as kind of set in stone when they're born. The growth mindset is I can learn anything and I can take on a challenge and learn things. And so there's, for example, with a fixed mindset, people might be jealous of other people's success because they view it as like a zero-sum game. Well, if they're successful, that means I can't, or whatever it is. They take any kind of criticism or critiques personally because they take it as a personal attack on themselves. People with a growth mindset take feedback as an opportunity to grow and develop. And so it's been a very important book for me personally in terms of how I view things and if I ever come across a challenge on how I approach it. But it's also been a very important book for me in terms of how I approach employees and how I view employee performance, how I view new associates who start with me after law school and their development and training. And, what can they be? I mean, the whole idea of it is, yes, there might be people that kind of have natural tendencies to be good at certain things. For example, like math, there's certain people that might have a natural tendency. Maybe their brain is just wired away to be somewhat good at math. But you can be good at it too if you learn it. Like these skills can be learned if you actually put in the effort. But what happens a lot of times is the people with a fixed mindset, they get frustrated because they don't get that instant success. And they have that view of, I'm just not good at it. And so they just don't do it. And they don't put forth the effort. Learning a language is another example. People just say, well, I just can't do it. I just don't have that brain. Well, then you're never going to do it. Or I can't learn an instrument. If you view it as, hey, I can learn anything and do anything, it really opens up a lot of opportunities in your life, professionally and personally.
I mean, the people listening can't see this, but I'm smiling ear to ear. Darl, I gotta be honest, you're speaking the Nate Crespo gospel. The growth mindset and the scarcity mindset is something that I learned a couple of years ago, and it absolutely changed my life. You see the world completely differently,
hmm
and your analogies to sort of the math, I think that's really important because I think there is a striking distinction between talent and skills, where
hmm
talent comes naturally to people. Some people are very good at math or they're very good at physics. I'm not. I'm terrible at it. But
Yeah,
there are skills out there in the world that you can teach yourself and learn about through books or podcasts or the
sure.
internet or
I mean,
whatever.
I'll give you a perfect example. Like, I would probably never be somebody, and I didn't take calculus, but I would probably never be somebody that was going to get an A plus in calculus and go on to be an engineer. Like, I've just, from like third grade, I've always done better in like the reading comprehension side of things. I think it's just the way I'm wired. But could I have taken courses and applied myself and developed the skills to like get a passing grade? I'll give you a perfect example. I had to take a statistics class in college for my political science major, and I was like, man, I'm screwed. Like, this is gonna tank my GPA. I suck at math. I'm gonna be terrible at it. I got 100 on every single exam. Every single exam got the highest grade in the class because I was interested in it. I applied myself. The professor presented it in a way that was digestible. Now, if you asked me now anything about what I learned in statistics, I'd probably like be like, I don't remember any of this. But I think that goes to show like I had the capacity to learn that skill, to apply myself and do well, not only pass, but to do the best that I think he had told me at one point that I did the best that anybody had ever done in that class. And I was like blown away. I'm like, I suck at math. How did I do this? I took an income tax. We had to take income tax in law school. And there's no math really involved in that other than just kind of basic stuff. But I'm like, man, I'm gonna suck at this because like, I had tried to do my taxes before, like with my college jobs and stuff, and I would do like the TurboTax thing, and I'm like, man, I'm screwed. I got a 99. I got the highest grade in the class. Again, I think it goes to viewing things just through a different lens. And so if I had to say for anybody to like to just go get one book this week and pick it up and start reading it, it would be The Growth Mindset. It will fundamentally change the way that you view just about everything in life.
So I'll tell you what, I'll be on Amazon later today, looking up the book.
I'll
And
send you a copy. When we get off, send me, you're in college. You don't need to be paying for books. You have enough books to pay for. When we get off, shoot me an email or message me on LinkedIn with your address. I'll get a copy delivered to you.
wow, wow. I appreciate that so much, Darl. You don't
No
even
problem.
understand. I literally I eat books. It's very funny. But I just love reading. The book, do you want to hear the book I'm reading right now? Can I do it?
Yeah.
Can I do it? Okay. I'm reading Visionary by Graham Hancock. I'm very
Okay.
into he's
To make a note of that.
he's an archaeologist, but I forget. There's a Netflix series that he did. Uh
Okay.
Basically he sort of explores these ancient sort of temples, and he's totally messing up the history timeline of human beings. And I'm just really interested in it because they would say that it was only hunter-gatherers before that last ice age. But with all the new evidence coming out, I can't believe I'm talking about this right now. But
Yeah, it's
with
interesting.
with all this new evidence coming out in sort of the archaeology world, they're now finding out that there's these structures, giant structures as big as the pyramids of Giza, that exist out there in the world that are almost 30, 40, 50,000 years old. Um,
Wow.
and they're, completely made of, stone. These people are traveling hundreds of miles. They're bringing, specifically, there's this one in Indonesia. It's this giant pyramid temple.
Wow.
And these rocks are based 100 miles away. It's this sort of volcanic rock. So basically, people were carrying this stuff 100 miles, building these giant structures. And I've just been diving down this rabbit hole, and I simply cannot get out. I love it so much. I just started the book. I bought it the other day.
No, that's great. I mean, I think developing a habit of reading, because you've got to read a ton in law school. Like you can get away in undergrad with maybe not reading stuff all the time or getting kind of the Cliff Notes versions. You got to read in law school. Can you get the outlines and the other things and um, read that and do an okay job? Maybe. But I think ultimately to develop your brain as a lawyer and think like a lawyer, you got to read the cases. So that gets back to studying things that interest you and develop that skill and that passion. And it sounds like you would have no problem reading reading cases. Um, yeah, subject matter is a little bit drier, but I'm sure you would like it.
Absolutely. I'm hoping I like it as well. And I can't believe I just got to talk about the book I'm reading about. I had to. I couldn't keep it within me. I just love that. I was reading it before I came on here. But last three questions here. First
Sure.
question, it's not weird anymore. It's an established question. I'm putting my foot down. What are the sorts of things that you consume, not food, consume on a daily basis in terms of, social media, whether that be Instagram or X, do you have any favorite people that you read all the time, maybe Substacks, so on and so forth?
Yeah. So, um, I don't, I read the AJC, which is the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. CNN, just kind of traditional news sites where I get my news from. Can also give me ideas for content for our website or for social media. Um, Not on Twitter or X, Twitter/X, one and the same now. Um, Instagram and Facebook, I check sometimes. We've got, both the firm having a presence on there, but me too. I've really tried to work over the last year of trying to develop my personal brand as a lawyer and just kind of reinforcing what I do. So, that also gives me ideas for things. YouTube, which is good for, we've been starting to do more YouTube videos. So it can help me kind of get ideas when I see news or other things like, oh, this happened. This would be a good thing for me to comment on. And that's really just kind of on a day-to-day basis, the main sources of information for me.
Yeah, I forgot about YouTube. I haven't mentioned YouTube at all in the previous podcast either. Thank you for pointing that out. Now I will write it down. It will be there forever. Second question. You're always working, you got your own law firm, but what does an ideal Friday night or Sunday morning look for Darl Champion?
That's a great question. So I'm a huge sports fan. I have season tickets to Falcons, Hawks, Braves, and Atlanta United. Every
Beautiful.
major sports team. We actually have a suite at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium for Falcons and
Yeah.
United. So I love going to sports. So if there's a sporting event, I'd love to do that. Also love going out to nice restaurants. I'm a somewhat of a foodie. My mom says that I'm a food snob, but I love going to nice restaurants, trying new foods, trying things, having a nice cocktail. That's a good Friday night. Cocktails not good on Sunday morning. Sunday morning, yeah, I've got two small kids. I just like getting up. We order breakfast a lot of times from, they love McDonald's. So that's kind of their thing is Egg McMuffin and hash browns, or maybe we'll get pancakes from somewhere. And just spending time with them, playing with them, being lazy, working out, love exercise. I think it's a great way to kind of clear your mind and come up with ideas. So if I can do that on a Sunday, it's great.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of McDonald's. I have to say that it is my guilty pleasure every so
Man,
often.
their French fries are so good, but you got to get them like when they're hot and like they got that crisp. Oh, they're good. They're good.
Literally to die for. Oh my,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to resist and not get McDonald's today. But I have to ask, are you a big? I'm a huge soccer fan, so I love that you got the season tickets to the beautiful Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I can't believe you have a suite. That place is awesome.
Yeah.
But do you love the soccer? Do you love Atlanta United?
So I will tell you, I like soccer. I probably couldn't name a person who plays on the team. Maybe two people. I like it. It's entertaining. If I was sitting at home, on a Friday, Saturday night and they were on, I wouldn't watch them. Um, occasionally, like when there's nothing else on a Sunday morning, maybe I'll watch a Premier League game or something just because it's the only sport on. I like sports, I like competition. But like I will seriously, like if I was able to, I would watch every single Braves game. Like I like it's kind of my wife's background noise for TV is HGTV, House Hunters, whatever. For me, I'll have a Braves game on and I'll watch every single game and I'll have no problem doing it. Same thing with the Atlanta Hawks. I could watch every single game and have it on as background noise. Um, so that's kind of the difference between, where I'm at with soccer right now. We have the World Cup is coming. We're gonna have, of course, y'all are getting the final,
We
the World
are.
Cup final. But we've got a bunch of games here for that. We've got Copa America is going to be here in a few months. I think 2 games are going to be, including a match involving Argentina.
Oh,
So like I'll go to that. Like I love the idea of watching, Messi play. I was hopeful he was going to come last year when Miami played here, and he did not play. And a lot of people were unhappy. There was a lot of fans who showed up in Messi jerseys to not see Messi play. So yeah, that's kind of how I would describe my affection for soccer.
Absolutely. I actually got into the soccer thing late. My dad played college football, so he was not a fan of the whole soccer thing. He didn't let us play at all throughout because
Mhm.
we're a big basketball family, big football family. I love the Brooklyn Nets, even though they suck. But that's okay. No moves at the trade deadline. I'll keep it to myself. Um,
Atlanta Hawks did not make any moves at the trade deadline either after all those rumors.
yeah, I'm surprised DeJounte Murray didn't go anywhere. I heard something he might come to the Nets. I was like,
I heard Trey Young to the Spurs, which I know was like a fantasy. That wasn't going to happen. But, I heard DeJounte Murray to the Lakers, to the Pelicans, to all these people, and, ended up. But yeah, that's kind of, as you can tell, I follow a lot of the Atlanta sports teams. But again, like if you were, hey, this guy's getting transferred or traded, whatever they call it in soccer, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know who the guy is. Wouldn't know much about him. I know when Joseph Martinez played here when we won the MLS Cup, like he was our best player. I know that. Otherwise, I just go and watch and have a good time, and that's the extent of it.
well, there's no, I mean, listen, if I had season tickets at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, I would be there every single chance I possibly could be. And I'm also a huge Trey Young fan. I love Trey Young. He's one of my favorite. I've been watching him. Me and my brothers are very big into high school basketball, so we've been watching him ever since he was in high school.
That's
I think he's
interesting. Yeah.
absolutely amazing. A lot of people don't like him because he draws a lot of fouls, but it's the game. He's
Yeah.
good at it, and they don't like it. But
Yeah.
final question here. I do this at the end of every episode. What are your words of wisdom for the aspiring law students, the current law students, and the current legal professionals out there in the world?
Sure. So, I would say, follow what you enjoy doing, not what somebody else wants you to do. Sometimes people go to law school because a family member or there's some societal pressure or whatever that they think they need to be a lawyer. Sometimes people go to a particular practice area because they think they need to do that. They've been told they're good at arguing, so they want to be a litigator. But maybe their true passion is in just going through contracts and working on real estate deals. At the end of the day, there is something for everybody in law. There's transactional, there's litigation, there's private law firms, there's government, there's education, there's in-house counsel roles. There's people who start their own firms who really just become business people who don't ever handle a case. They just want to be the rainmaker or whatever. It's okay. Like, do what you want to do and kind of have that vision of what's your ideal life. Like, what do I want to do? Where do I want to be in 10 years, 5 years, whatever? And then do it. Don't follow somebody else's plan for you.
Well, Darl, beautifully said. And that's the podcast. Thank you so much for doing
Excellent.
this.
Thanks for having me on, Nate.
No problem. And for everyone out there listening, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one.